Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. And do you know how many people in America? Yeah, but I'm really not amazing at what drives a person to ask for a single olive with the pit still in it, or a bizarre feast fit for a king? Death, I believe. Imagine standing on the precipice of the unknown, gazing into the abyss of your own mortality. Robert Frada has been on death row for nearly 3 decades and is scheduled for execution tomorrow night in Huntsville. As the sands of time slip through your fingers, what final wish would you make before the curtain falls? I am sorry that my acts of self-defense ended up in court like this. Well, join us as we delve into some of the most disturbing last wishes of death row inmates. Lawrence Russell Brewer. Lawrence Russell Brewer, a name etched in infamy, is perhaps best known for his horrifying crime and his extraordinary final meal request. Brewer was a white supremacist who, along with 2 accomplices, committed one of the most brutal hate crimes in recent American history. In June 1998, in Jasper, Texas, Brewer and his cohorts kidnapped James Byrd Jr., a 40-year-old African-American man. They chained Byrd by his ankles to the back of a pickup truck and dragged him for 3 miles along a country road, resulting in Byrd's horrific death. Brewer's heinous actions led to widespread outrage and significant media coverage, highlighting the persistent issue of racial violence in the United States. Following his arrest, Brewer was charged with capital murder. The trial took place in 1999, and Brewer was swiftly convicted and sentenced to death, a fate that underscored the severity of his crime. His case became a focal point in the discussions about hate crimes and capital punishment. As Brewer's execution date approached, he made a final meal request that was as excessive as it was controversial. Brewer asked for 2 chicken fried steaks smothered in gravy with sliced onions, a triple meat bacon cheeseburger with all the fixings, a cheese omelet with ground beef, tomatoes, onions, bell peppers, and jalapenos, a pound of barbecued meat with half a loaf of white bread, a meat lover's pizza, 3 fajitas, a bowl of fried okra with ketchup, a pint of Bluebell vanilla ice cream, a slab of peanut butter fudge with crushed peanuts, and 3 root beers. The sheer magnitude of Brewer's request caught the attention of the public and the media. However, what made this request particularly disturbing was that when the lavish meal was presented to him, Brewer refused to eat any of it. This act of defiance or perhaps indifference led to significant repercussions. In response to what was seen as an abuse of the final meal privilege, Texas prison officials decided to abolish the practice of granting specific last meal requests to condemned inmates. On September 21, 2011, Lawrence Brewer was executed by lethal injection at the Huntsville unit in Texas. His final act left a legacy not just of his crime, but also of his controversial last wish, John Henry Ramirez. John Henry Ramirez is a name that has garnered significant attention due to both the heinous nature of his crime and the unusual nature of his final wish. Ramirez was a Texas man convicted of a brutal murder that shocked the local community and garnered widespread media coverage. In 2004, Ramirez, along with 2 female accomplices, embarked on a robbery spree in Corpus Christi, Texas. The spree culminated in the murder of Pablo Castro, a 45-year-old convenience store clerk. Ramirez approached Castro as he was taking out the trash and, in a sudden and violent attack, stabbed him 29 times, leading to his immediate death. The motive was robbery, but the brutality of the act suggested something far more sinister. Ramirez and his accomplices fled the scene with a paltry $1.25, highlighting the senselessness of the crime. Following the murder, Ramirez evaded capture for more than 3 years, fleeing to Mexico. However, in 2008, he was apprehended and extradited to the United States. His trial was swift, given the overwhelming evidence against him, and in 2007, he was convicted of capital murder. The jury, moved by the brutality of the crime and the impact on Castro's family, sentenced Ramirez to death. As Ramirez's execution date loomed, he made an unusual final wish. Unlike many who request elaborate meals, Ramirez sought spiritual solace. He requested that his pastor, Dana Moore, be allowed to lay hands on him and pray aloud as he was being executed. This request, while simple, sparked a significant legal battle. Ramirez argued that his religious rights were being infringed upon when prison officials denied his request, citing security concerns. The case escalated to the U.S. Supreme Court, which, in a rare move, granted a stay of execution to consider the religious freedom implications. In March 2022, the court ruled in favor of Ramirez, affirming that his religious rights should be respected. This landmark decision underscored the importance of religious freedom, even for those condemned to die. On October 5, 2022, John Henry Ramirez was executed by lethal injection at the Huntsville unit in Texas. As per his final wish, Pastor Dana Moore was present, laying hands on Ramirez and praying aloud during the execution. Philip Workman's story is a story of crime, remorse, and a final wish that captured the public's imagination. Workman was a Tennessee man whose life took a dark turn, leading to a series of events that ended in tragedy and a controversial execution. In 1981, Workman, struggling with substance addiction and financial woes, attempted to rob a Wendy's restaurant in Memphis, Tennessee. The robbery went horribly wrong when police officers arrived on the scene, leading to a confrontation. During the chaos, Lieutenant Ronald Oliver was shot and killed. Workman was immediately apprehended and charged with the murder of Lieutenant Oliver, a charge he would always contest, claiming that the fatal shot was fired by another officer during the crossfire. Despite his claims, Workman was convicted of first-degree murder in 1982 and sentenced to death. The trial and subsequent appeals were marked by controversies, including allegations of police misconduct and questions about the ballistics evidence used to convict him. Nevertheless, Workman remained on death row for over 2 decades, his case drawing the attention of anti-death penalty activists and advocates for criminal justice reform. As his execution date approached, Workman made a final wish that was both unusual and deeply humanitarian. He requested that a large vegetarian pizza be given to a homeless person. This selfless request was a stark contrast to the extravagant or bizarre last meal requests often made by death row inmates. It was a reflection of Workman's desire to do some good in his final moments, highlighting a sense of remorse and a wish to make a positive impact, however small. The Tennessee prison officials, however, refused to honor Workman's request. They cited policy and procedural reasons, stating that they could not fulfill a last meal request that involved a third party. This decision sparked outrage and disappointment among Workman supporters and the wider public. In response, many people across the country took it upon themselves to fulfill his wish. On the day of his execution, homeless shelters in Tennessee and beyond received numerous vegetarian pizzas from anonymous donors, paying tribute to Workman's final act of kindness. On May 9, 2007, Philip Workman was executed by lethal injection at the Riverbend Maximum Security Institution in Nashville, Tennessee. His execution was a somber event, marked by the knowledge that his last wish had inspired a wave of generosity and compassion. James Edward Smith, an inmate whose final wish raised eyebrows and stoked imaginations, is a unique figure in the annals of death row history. Smith's crime was as shocking as his last request was bizarre, leaving an indelible mark on the criminal justice system and the public psyche. In March 1983, James Edward Smith, a former tax accountant, walked into the Union National Bank in Houston, Texas, with a grandiose plan to commit a robbery. Armed and desperate, Smith attempted to make off with a significant sum of money. However, the robbery quickly went awry, and in the ensuing chaos, Smith shot and killed Larry Don Rojas, a bank teller. His attempt to flee was unsuccessful, and Smith was promptly apprehended by the police. Smith's trial was swift, and given the clear evidence against him, he was convicted of first-degree murder in October 1983. The jury, moved by the cold-blooded nature of the crime and the loss of an innocent life, sentenced Smith to death. Over the years, Smith's appeals and legal maneuvers failed to overturn his sentence, and his execution date was set. As his execution loomed, James Edward Smith made a final request that was both eerie and perplexing. Smith asked for a lump of dirt, specifically for a voodoo ritual known as a hexing ritual. The request was deeply rooted in his belief in voodoo practices, and he intended to use the dirt to mark his passage to the afterlife or to protect his spirit in the next world. This unsettling request was unprecedented and caused considerable consternation among prison officials. Ultimately, Smith's request for dirt was denied. Prison officials cited security and procedural concerns. stating that providing dirt for a ritual was outside the bounds of what could be allowed. Faced with the refusal, Smith settled for a much simpler and